She left without saying goodbye. No kiss on the cheek, no casual smile. Just grabbed her purse and rushed out the door like she couldn't get away fast enough. After 20 years of marriage, that was the first time she'd ever done that. I stood by the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, staring at the door that had just slammed shut. For a moment, I thought about running after her, asking why she seemed so distracted this morning. But I didn't. Instead, I shrugged it off, telling myself I was imagining things. Mornings in our house were usually chaotic, but this one had been quieter than usual. Our youngest, Sophia, sat at the table, happily munching on her cereal and chattering about her class's upcoming field trip to the zoo. "Daddy, can we go too? You like giraffes, right?" she asked between spoonfuls. "Giraffes are my favorite," I said, smiling. Ellie, our 17-year-old, appeared next, dragging her feet as usual. "Morning," she mumbled, grabbing a piece of toast and heading straight for her phone. Typical teenager. "Don't forget you've got your math test today," I reminded her, earning a groan in response. Upstairs, Brad, our oldest, was probably still asleep. Being home from college for the summer meant his mornings started around noon, and that was fine by me. I like having him home. It reminded me of when the house was always full of noise and laughter. The past 20 years had gone by in a blur. Mornings like these, making breakfast, joking with the kids, rushing them out the door, had been the foundation of my life. I wasn't the kind of guy who needed much more than that. Mornings were also when Em and I usually connected, even if just for a moment. She'd sip her coffee while I packed Sophia's lunch, teasing me for putting too many snacks in the bag. But this morning, she'd barely spoken. She was out the door before I'd even finished my coffee. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just running late. By the time I dropped Sophia off at school and returned home, my own day was already filling up. Owning a business meant I rarely had downtime, and my small chain of auto repair shops kept me busy. I spent the next few hours going over invoices and scheduling shifts, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of work. Around lunchtime, I decided to call Brad and see if he wanted to grab a bite. He answered on the third ring, sounding groggy. "Already awake?" "Miracles happen," I joked. "Very funny, Dad," he replied, laughing. We met at a burger joint downtown, one of our favorite spots. Sitting across from him, I couldn't help but feel proud. He was smart, driven, and had a great sense of humor. Despite everything life threw at us, I felt like I'd done okay as a dad. After lunch, I swung by Sophia's school to drop off the water bottle she'd forgotten. When I got there, she ran up to me, her little arms wrapped around my leg. "You're the best, Daddy," she beamed. It was moments like these that made all the chaos worth it. The day passed quickly, and by the time evening rolled around, the house was back to its usual hum. Sophia was running circles around the living room with her stuffed animals. Ellie was upstairs FaceTiming her friends, and Brad was raiding the fridge. When walked through the door just before dinner, she looked tired but managed to smile. "Long day?" I asked, handing her a glass of water. "You have no idea," she replied, sinking into a chair. Everything felt normal again, or at least close enough. I didn't press her about the morning. There was no reason to. The morning started like any other. I made breakfast for Sophia, heart-shaped pancakes, her favorite, while Em sat at the table with her coffee, scrolling through her phone. "Do giraffes eat pancakes, Daddy?" Sophia asked between bites. "I think they might," I said, laughing. "But only heart-shaped ones." She giggled, her mouth sticky with syrup, and Em smiled at us. It felt like things were back to normal after yesterday's odd start. The day passed in a rhythm I knew well. I dropped Sophia off at school and went straight to work. My auto repair business kept me busy, but it was a good kind of busy. I like solving problems, keeping things running smoothly. It gave me a sense of control, something solid to rely on. By lunchtime, my phone buzzed. It was Brad. "You free for lunch again, old man?" he teased. "Old man? Careful, or I'll forget to pay for your food," I shot back, grinning. We met at the same burger joint as the day before. He filled me in on his latest classes, internship interviews, and a girl he'd been seeing. Listening to him talk, I couldn't help but feel proud. Brad had turned out better than I could have hoped. A good head on his shoulders, a sharp sense of humor. He reminded me a little of myself at his age. After lunch, I stopped by the store to pick up a few things for dinner. Em had asked me to grab some extra vegetables for the stew she wanted to make. When I got home, The house was alive with the usual noises. Sophia playing with her dolls in the living room, Ellie talking loudly on FaceTime upstairs. Vegetables delivered, I called out as I walked into the kitchen. Perfect timing, Em said, smiling as she chopped onions. She seemed relaxed, humming softly to herself as she cooked. I leaned against the counter, watching her. She still looked as beautiful as the day I met her, even with her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Over dinner, we all laughed and joked, the way we always did. Sophia told us about her school project. Ellie complained about a teacher, and Brad recounted a ridiculous story from college. It was one of those evenings that reminded me why I love this life so much. After we cleaned up and put Sophia to bed, Em sat down next to me on the couch. I was thinking, she said, tucking her legs under her. It's been a while since I've had a weekend to myself. Karen's been asking me to come out to her cabin with the girls. I thought I might take her up on it. I looked at her, surprised. Em rarely took time for herself. Most weekends, she was home with us, juggling family and work. You should go, I said, nodding. It'll be good for you to unwind. She smiled, leaning over to kiss my cheek. Thanks, Alex. You're the best. Don't stay out too late partying, I teased. She laughed, shaking her head. Yeah, right? Knowing Karen, we'll be in bed by 9. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how long it had been since we'd both truly relaxed. Life had a way of pulling you in 100 directions at once, and sometimes you forgot to just breathe. I told myself that maybe this weekend was exactly what needed to recharge. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt at peace. Everything seemed to be falling back into place. Saturday morning started with the sound of suitcases zipping and Sophia running around the house, tugging at Emma's shirt. Are you really leaving, Mommy? Sophia asked, her eyes wide. Just for a couple of days, sweetheart, said, kneeling down to hug her. I'll be back before you know it. She kissed Sophia on the forehead, then turned to me. Don't let her eat too much candy, she said with a teasing smile. No promises, I joked, waving as she walked out the door. As soon as S car disappeared down the street, Sophia tugged at my arm. What are we doing today, Daddy? I grinned, already having a plan. Get your swimsuit. We're going to the water park. Her squeal of excitement echoed through the house, and even Ellie peeked out of her room, intrigued. You're coming too, I told her. Ellie rolled her eyes, but smiled. Fine, but I'm not getting my hair wet. An hour later, we were standing in line for tickets, Sophia bouncing with excitement while Ellie scrolled through her phone. The park was packed with families, the smell of sunscreen, and the sound of laughter filling the air. Sophia wasted no time dragging me to the kiddie slides. Come on, Daddy, she yelled, her tiny hand gripping mine as she climbed the stairs. Watching her slide down, her face lit up with pure joy, was worth every second of standing in line. Meanwhile, Ellie found a spot under an umbrella and took a series of selfies, making exaggerated faces that had both of us laughing. I joined her for a while, and we ended up taking the most ridiculous family photos, me with water dripping off my face, Sophia photobombing in the background. By the time lunchtime rolled around, we were starving. Hot dogs, nachos, and overpriced ice cream became our feast, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed so much in one day. Later, as the sun began to set and the crowd thinned out, we packed up and headed home, exhausted but happy. That was so much fun, Daddy, Sophia said from the back seat, clutching the souvenir stuffed dolphin she insisted on buying. Glad you had fun, kiddo, I replied, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She was already dozing off. At home, Brad called just as I was putting Sophia to bed. Sounds like you guys had a good day, he said after I told him about our trip. Yeah, we did, I said, smiling. It's nice to just enjoy the little things, you know? Sunday was quieter, spent watching movies with the kids, and making a big family breakfast. When it came home that evening, she looked tired but relaxed. How was it? I asked, helping her with her bags. Really nice, she said, smiling faintly. It was good to catch up with Karen. She gave Sophia a long hug, then sat down to chat with Ellie for a bit. Everything felt normal like it should. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the weekend. It had been one of those rare, perfect stretches of time where nothing else mattered but family. I had no idea it was just the calm before the storm. The week started like any other. After our fun-filled weekend, the house was back to its usual rhythm. Em seemed calm and cheerful, even more attentive than usual. She asked about my day, helped Ellie with her homework, and played a board game with Sophia before bedtime. I told myself that everything was fine. Whatever weird feeling I'd had before must have just been my imagination. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I settled into my office to finish some paperwork for the shop. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the hum of the air conditioner. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting a notification about work or maybe a message from Brad. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "You deserve to know the truth." Attached to the message was a video file. I stared at the screen for a moment, my heart starting to race. At first, I thought it was some kind of spam or prank, but something about the wording, it felt personal. Against my better judgment, I tapped on the file. The video started shaky, as if filmed secretly. The camera panned across what looked like an office, the lighting dim. A man sat on the edge of a desk, laughing softly, and then I saw her. Em. She was standing close to him, too close, her hands on his shoulders. My stomach dropped. Before I could process what I was seeing, the man reached for her, pulling her into him. What happened next felt like a punch to the gut. The camera shifted slightly, but it was clear enough. Clothes were removed. Her voice, his movements, it was undeniable. The entire thing lasted only a couple of minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When the video ended, my phone screen went dark, leaving me staring at my own reflection. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen, my mind refusing to believe what I'd just seen. My chest tightened, my breaths coming out shallow. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be Em. But it was. I replayed the video, hoping to convince myself it wasn't her. But it was. Her laugh, the way she moved, it was unmistakable. Anger boiled inside me, sharp and overwhelming. My hands clenched into fists, and for a split second, I thought about storming upstairs, waking her up, and demanding answers. But then I stopped myself. I couldn't afford to lose control. Not yet. Instead, I saved the video to a secure folder on my phone and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced, replaying every moment from the past few months. Her late nights, the weekend with Karen, the distant look in her eyes. All the little things I'd ignored now screamed at me. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to process it all. The woman I'd built my life with, the mother of my children, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. When I finally stood up and headed to bed, and was already asleep, her breathing slow and steady. I stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment. She looked so peaceful, like nothing was wrong. I clenched my jaw, turned off the light, and left the room. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what to do. But for now, I needed to keep my anger in check. The morning after I saw the video, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Em was already downstairs, making coffee and chatting with Sophia. Her laughter floated up the stairs, light and carefree, like nothing had changed. But everything had. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to act normal. Storming into the kitchen and confronting her wasn't an option. Not yet. I needed time to think, to plan. "Morning, Daddy," Sophia chirped as I walked in. She was sitting at the table, her plate stacked with pancakes. Em glanced up and smiled at me, holding out a mug of coffee. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice steady. Em seemed completely at ease. She talked about her weekend with Karen, asked about my day ahead, and reminded Ellie to pack her gym clothes for school. I nodded along, answering when necessary, but my mind was miles away. After breakfast, I dropped Sophia off at school and went straight to my office. I couldn't focus on work. The video kept replaying in my head. Every time I thought about it, a fresh wave of anger and betrayal hit me. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Brian, my lawyer. "Brian, it's Alex. I need to talk to you. It's urgent." We met that afternoon at his office. I showed him the video, my hands trembling as I handed over my phone. Brian watched in silence, then looked up at me, his expression serious. "Well, this changes things," he said. "If you're serious about divorce, this is solid evidence. But you need to be smart about this, Alex. Don't confront her yet. If she senses something, it could complicate things. What do I do?" I asked, my voice raw. "Start protecting your assets," Brian said firmly. separate your finances, prepare your business, and make sure you have a plan for custody. This video will give you leverage, but you need to play it cool for now. I nodded, taking it all in. It felt overwhelming, but I knew he was right. That evening, I returned home and slipped back into my role. I helped Sophia with her homework, joked with Ellie about her favorite TV show, and ate dinner with like everything was fine. "How was your day?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Busy," I said, forcing a smile. "You?" "Same," she replied, her tone light. Inside, I was screaming, but on the outside, I was calm, composed. I couldn't let her see the cracks. Not yet. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. The time for confrontation would come, but not now. First, I needed to protect what mattered most: my kids, my business, and my future. Over the next week, I threw myself into action. The video was a constant weight in my pocket, but I knew that acting on impulse would only make things worse. I needed to protect what mattered most: my kids, my business, and everything I'd worked so hard to build. First, I opened a new bank account in my name only. I started transferring small amounts from our joint account, just enough that it wouldn't raise suspicion. Every time I moved money, I felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't how I'd ever imagined handling my finances. But guilt wouldn't keep my family secure. I also made a call to my accountant, explaining that I needed to reorganize some of the business accounts. It wasn't a complete lie. I had plans to transfer ownership of the company into a trust under my mother's name. Emma had never been involved in the business. She barely knew how it operated, so I doubted she'd notice any changes. At home, I played my part perfectly. I laughed at Sophia's jokes, helped Ellie with her college applications, and even joined Em in watching a show we both liked. She seemed completely at ease, oblivious to the storm brewing just under the surface. One evening after dinner, I casually mentioned selling one of our cars. "It's getting old," I said, shrugging. "Might as well trade it in while it still has value." Em barely looked up from her phone. "Sure, whatever you think is best." That night, I finalized the sale online, quietly moving the funds into my new account. It was a small victory, but every step forward made me feel a little more in control. The hardest part was keeping my emotions in check. There were moments when I'd catch myself watching Em, wondering how she could sit there so calmly after what she'd done. The betrayal still burned, but I couldn't let it show. On Friday, I met with Brian again to review my progress. "You're doing everything right," he said, nodding approvingly. "But remember, Alex, timing is everything. Once you file for divorce, things can get messy fast. Be ready." "I will," I said, my voice steady. "I just want to make sure she can't touch what's mine." That night, I sat in my office, going through old paperwork from the early days of my business. Seeing the receipts, the contracts, the long hours I'd put in, it reminded me why I was doing this. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting the future I'd built for my kids. As I filed the last document away, Sophia poked her head into the room. "Daddy, can you read me a story?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, setting everything aside. I followed her upstairs, her little hand in mine. Sitting beside her bed, reading about princesses and dragons, I felt a sense of clarity. No matter how hard this got, I wasn't going to let MS choices ruin what I'd built for my family. By the time Friday evening rolled around, I was ready. The papers were filed, the assets were protected, and my mind was clear. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward all week. After dinner, I waited for the house to quiet down. Sophia was asleep, clutching her stuffed dolphin, and Ellie was in her room with her headphones on. The house felt still, like the calm before a storm. Em was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled as I walked into the room. "Hey," she said, "everything okay?" I sat down across from her, placing my phone on the coffee table between us. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm. "We need to talk," I said. Her smile faltered. "What about?" I unlocked my phone, opened the video, and slid it toward her. "Watch this," I said. She hesitated, her brow furrowing as she reached for the phone. The moment the video started playing, her face went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth, and her eyes widened in shock. When it ended, she set the phone down slowly, her hand trembling. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at the table. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "Alex, I can explain." "No," I said, cutting her off. "You don't get to explain. I want the truth, not excuses. How long has this been going on?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." "How long?" I repeated, my voice firm. Since Christmas," she admitted, her voice breaking. "It didn't mean anything, Alex. I swear. It was just what?" I snapped. "Just fun? Just a way to pass the time? You've been lying to me for months, Em. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" She broke down, sobbing. "I don't know why I did it. I was feeling lost, like you didn't see me anymore. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Alex. Please, you have to believe me." Her words stung, but I refused to let her twist this into my fault. "You weren't trying to hurt me? You've been sneaking around behind my back, and you think that doesn't hurt? What about the kids? What happens when they find out what you've done?" "I'll do anything," she begged, reaching for my hand. "Just don't do this. Don't end us. We can fix this." I pulled my hand away, standing up. "There's nothing left to fix. I already filed for divorce." Her face crumpled, and she let out a choked sob. "Alex, please. I'm done," I said firmly. "This is on you, Em, not me." I turned and walked out of the room, her sobs echoing behind me. When I got to my office, I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. The weight of the confrontation hit me all at once, but instead of pain, I felt relief. It was over. The lies, the pretending, the endless second-guessing, it was all over. Now it was time to focus on what really mattered, my kids and our future. The days following the confrontation were heavy with silence. Em tried to act like nothing had changed, going through the motions of her routine, but the tension between us was impossible to ignore. I kept my distance, speaking to her only when absolutely necessary. Even then, my responses were clipped and cold. The kids began to notice. "Dad, is everything okay with you and Mom?" Ellie asked one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. Her voice was tentative, like she already knew the answer but didn't want to hear it. I paused, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Ellie, we need to talk," I said finally. I sat her down in the living room and told her the truth, at least as much as I could without giving her all the details. "Your mom and we're getting a divorce," I said, my voice steady. Her face fell. "What? Why?" "It's complicated," I replied, not wanting to drag her into the ugliness of MS betrayal. "But it's something that has to happen. Just know that I love you and your sister, and that's never going to change." She stared at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I get it," she said softly. I don't know how to feel about this." "It's okay to feel upset," I said. "It's a lot to process." Later that night, I called Brad. He deserved to know too. When I told him about the divorce, he was quiet at first. "Is it because of Mom?" he finally asked. "Yeah," I admitted. "It is." There was a pause, and then he sighed. "I can't believe she'd do this to you. To us." "I know," I said, "but we'll get through it. We always do." Brad promised to come by that weekend to check in, and I felt a sense of relief knowing he'd be there for support. Meanwhile, Em was struggling. She tried to talk to Ellie, but my daughter kept her responses short and polite, clearly unsure how to navigate her feelings. Sophia, too young to understand the full scope of what was happening, started asking questions that broke my heart. "Why doesn't Mommy smile anymore?" she asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. "Sometimes grown-ups have hard days," I said, stroking her hair. "But it doesn't mean we don't love you." Despite everything, I focused on keeping the kids' lives as stable as possible. I made sure Sophia still had her bedtime stories, Ellie still had her quiet moments to talk, and Brad felt included, even from a distance. As for Em, her attempts to mend things with the kids were met with mixed results. Brad wouldn't return her calls. Ellie spoke to her, but the warmth in their relationship had been replaced by caution. One evening, I found Em sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched dinner. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. "You've turned them all against me," she said, her voice breaking. "No," I replied calmly. "You did that yourself." I walked away, leaving her to sit in the silence she'd created. By the end of the week, I started to feel a shift. The weight in my chest wasn't as suffocating. The house, though quieter, felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I could see a way forward, a life without lies, without tension, a life where I could focus on my kids and rebuild what mattered most. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were going to be okay. The house had grown colder, not physically, but emotionally. Every interaction with Em was strained, and the kids were becoming more distant from her by the day. I tried to keep things calm for Sophia's sake, but the tension was impossible to ignore. Then one evening, everything came to a head. Ellie came into my office, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Dad, can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. "Of course," I said, setting down my paperwork. She sat down, hesitating before finally saying, "Mom's been saying things about you. Bad things." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" Ellie shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "She told me and Brad that you used to hit her, that she didn't say anything because of us." The words hit me like a brick. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. "She what?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Ellie nodded, her eyes watering. "She said if we backed her up, she could get custody of Sophia. She said it was for the best." I felt my chest tighten with anger. "And what did you say?" Ellie looked up at me, her expression hardening. "I told her she was lying. I told her I've lived in this house my whole life, and I've never seen you raise a hand to anyone." My throat burned, a mix of gratitude and pain flooding through me. "Thank you for standing up for the truth," I said quietly. Ellie shook her head, her voice trembling. "I don't understand her, Dad. How could she do this? How could she try to drag us into this mess?" Before I could answer, Brad walked in, his face flushed with anger. "She's unbelievable," he spat, pacing the room. "She called me earlier and told me the same thing. Said we needed to stick together as a family. I told her if she even thinks about dragging me into her lies, she can forget my name." Hearing my kids defend me, even in such a terrible situation, brought a lump to my throat. I reached out and put a hand on Brad's shoulder. "I'm sorry you both had to deal with this. You shouldn't have to." "It's not your fault," Ellie said firmly. She's lost it." Later that night, while the kids were upstairs, Em tried to talk to me. "Why are they turning against me, Alex?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. "You've poisoned them against me." "No," I said coldly. "You did that yourself when you started lying to them. Don't you see what you're doing, Em? You're destroying any chance you have of a relationship with them." Her shoulders sagged, but the tears didn't stop. I don't want to lose them." "Then stop trying to manipulate them," I said firmly. The next morning, Brad and Ellie made it clear where they stood. At breakfast, Ellie told her mother directly, "If you ever lie about Dad again, you can forget my name." Brad nodded. "We're done with the games, Mom. Stop, or you'll lose us for good." Em didn't say a word. She just sat there, staring at her plate, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. As I drove Sophia to school that day, she hummed happily in the back seat, oblivious to the storm raging around her. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror and felt a renewed sense of purpose. No matter what, I was going to protect her from all of this. Em was burning every bridge she had left, and there was no turning back. The day the court finalized the divorce, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, mostly, but also a quiet sadness for what could have been. 20 years of marriage reduced to a stack of papers and a judge's signature. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I knew one thing for sure. My kids and I had a future to build. The judge had ruled in my favor. I was granted full custody of Sophia, with Em allowed supervised visitation. The house, the majority of the savings, and, most importantly, my business were protected. Em left the courtroom looking defeated, her lawyer patting her on the shoulder as she wiped away tears. I didn't feel satisfaction seeing her like that, just finality. Back home, life slowly began to take on a new rhythm. The house was quieter now, but it felt lighter, freer. Brad and Ellie were fully on board, stepping up to help with Sophia whenever I needed it. Brad even started coming to the shop more often, asking questions about the business. "You think I could take this over one day?" he asked one afternoon. "Absolutely," I said, smiling. Ellie, meanwhile, seemed to find comfort in spending more time with Sophia. I'd often find them on the living room floor, drawing together or watching cartoons. She'd grown into an incredible young woman, and I couldn't have been prouder. Em tried reaching out to the kids, but the damage had been done. Brad refused to answer her calls, and when she stopped by unexpectedly one afternoon, he didn't even come downstairs. Ellie, always the more empathetic of the two, met her at the door. "You can't keep showing up here, Mom," she said, her voice firm but calm. "I just want to talk," pleaded. Ellie shook her head. "You said some awful things, and you need to understand that we're not ready to forgive you. Maybe we never will." As for Sophia, she saw her mom during their scheduled visits, but the bond they once had seemed distant now. She clung to me more than ever, always seeking reassurance that I wasn't going anywhere. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Brad brought up something that caught me off guard. "You've been different lately, Dad," he said, a teasing smile on his face. "Happier?" "I think I am," I admitted. "It's been tough, but I think we're finally moving forward." The truth was, I had started to feel lighter. The anger, the betrayal, they weren't gone entirely, but they no longer consumed me. Instead, I focused on what I had: 3 amazing kids and a second chance at life. We ended that evening sitting around the fire pit in the backyard, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Sophia's laughter echoed into the night, a reminder that no matter how bad things had gotten, we'd made it through. I looked around at my kids, my family, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. We weren't perfect, and there was still work to be done, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. We were rebuilding, one step at a time, and this time it was going to be on a stronger foundation.